Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Brian from Resolve Technology with Chris and Michaela. Michaela is one of our Microsoft 365 partner resources. She knows everything about SharePoint, Teams, Viva, and other modern workplace solutions. So we are going to do a SharePoint Q&A, question and answer session. And hopefully we get a couple questions. If not, I'll chime in and Chris will chime in with a few. And we're just trying to get content out there to people so they can better use the Microsoft tools. A lot of clients pay for these subscriptions and they don't always utilize everything in the tenant. So let's take it away, Michaela.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction, Brian. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about SharePoint Online, as well as SharePoint in general and how it functions between, what are the differences with SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, how do they come together cohesively, and how to get the most out of your Microsoft 365 subscription if you're already using it. As we all know, many people have been using tools such as Excel, Word, PowerPoint, but that's really all that comes to mind when people think of the Microsoft suite, and there really is so much more that is there to offer. So I'd love to just start here with, what is SharePoint? What is this that we're talking about today? So SharePoint really is an all-in-one file sharing and collaboration tool designed for organizations ranging from a headcount of 1 to 5,000 plus people. There are a lot of different options for SharePoint Online. Primarily, people use SharePoint as a file sharing and collaboration tool, but people don't really understand or know yet that there really are intranet capabilities that are located within SharePoint as well. So we will take a good look at that today as well. I have a good example to show near the end. But really, any questions, Brian and Chris, that you have for me today to just kind of kick this off?
Will do. So first, you talked a little bit about SharePoint, but one of the things that people are unaware of are the storage limitations, right? And they're not really limitations, but they don't know how much storage they have in the cloud. So could you give us a little bit of a perspective on storage?
Absolutely. So out of the box with SharePoint Online, you are getting 2 terabytes of storage, which is quite a bit. There are ways to actually purchase additional storage, and then there's also ways to allocate storage to additional sites within your SharePoint environment. We're going to take a look at what a site looks like. Each SharePoint site comes with its own individual document library, and that has about a file limit on each individual folder falling under there, about 300,000 files. Again, you can reallocate storage depending upon what your needs are for departments, for other branches within that quote unquote internet that's built out. However, you can, again, purchase additional storage if the 2 terabytes is not enough for you, and that in no way is going to impede on the performance of syncing or sharing.
What about migration? So say they're migrating from some other provider, I don't know, iCloud, Google Drive, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So migrations, pretty simple. There's actually a native tool that is built into the Microsoft suite that's called the SharePoint migration tool. And it allows you to very easily connect cloud to cloud sources. And of course, there are some other tools out there that we would recommend using if it's going to be a server move up to the cloud as well. It's pretty simple and easy. What we typically say for recommendations for a migration cutover is we like to do them on Friday evenings and then have everyone back up and running on Monday morning, ready to go for the week. So usually with a cutover, unless of course we're dealing with a hybrid environment, we ask that, hands off the files after 5 p.m. on Fridays. Seeing that most people won't be working throughout the weekend, by Monday morning, everything is loaded up, moved over smoothly. The integrity of the folder names are held. And sometimes we get questions as well about, well, what do we do in the situation where we're dealing with invalid characters or long file path names? So within the SharePoint migration tool, again, just going back to this tool that's natively built in there, you're actually able to flip a little switch in there to replace all invalid characters and long file path names with just an underscore or a dash. And then from there, again, it's still holding on to the integrity of those files, runs a second pass to make sure that it gets anything that it may have skipped, and gives you a really clear report on anything that might have not copied over or migrated up, and allows you, again, to just really quickly and easily identify what those issues were, and then just run the pass again and make sure that everything is up there and running.
And we have seen that with our own client base in a Mac environment, a law office.
Mhm.
Chris had to help them rename the files, and they had to do quite a bit of work on their own. So any tools that we can leverage certainly will help the client in terms of time, whether we're or us, whether we're billing by the hour or at a flat rate. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think
SharePoint
the
migration.
issue. Oh, I'm sorry. I think
Go
the
ahead,
issue
Chris.
with the Mac client was, so Mac OS allows you to use special characters, like
Yes.
the $, asterisk, etc. And it doesn't play nicely with the OneDrive client there when it's syncing down those SharePoint files.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That's the battle of the operating systems, right? They love to throw something in and then throw a wrench. But yes, so that's exactly why that SharePoint migration tool feature is there, is because if you are a Mac user and you're moving up to a solution that's primarily Windows based, again, it just makes things a lot smoother and a lot easier for the client to move, and then not really see any issues on the end user end whatsoever.
So Michaela, I was reading something the other day from Microsoft. This is a preview, so I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but I'm curious. There is more reporting both on the Mac side and the Windows side for the sync portion of OneDrive, which I think will be helpful for end users and us, the IT providers, to figure out like what exactly is going on. Have you had a chance to see that yet in action?
I personally have not, but I know that we did actually just move a Mac user, and they were really pleased because, as we all know, previously syncing was not available the same way that it was for Mac as it is for Windows, which it now is, and there's a lot more features that are now coming down the pipe for them as well. And if users, again, are managed by Endpoint Manager, again, within the Microsoft 365 umbrella for mobile device management, mobile application management, there is a lot more reporting that is now available for Mac devices to really see how that sync agent is performing. And of course, there's other ways around, to manually sync specific files down too, but it's beautiful now that, Mac is being treated equally as Windows is, and they have that automatic sync agent now available as well.
Yeah, nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to hit you up with another question here. How does SharePoint interact with Teams? How do the two work together?
Mm-hmm.
How do they not work together? I think they mostly work together, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. This is one of the bigger questions that comes up a lot with Microsoft 365 users. So SharePoint and Teams, one and one, are the backbone of one another. So realistically, if you're creating any team, you're really creating a SharePoint site in the back end that has some form of file storage with it. Before I jump too deep into the details too, I just want to make a clear distinction between SharePoint sites. So there are two kinds of SharePoint sites. There's a collaboration site that does not natively come with a Microsoft team in collaboration. And then there's a SharePoint team site, which does have the ability to connect a team. And that's where that element of collaborating within the team itself is going to become available. The beauty in having a SharePoint team site and then a team connected to it, of course, is that whether you are working out of SharePoint Online, whether you are working out of your desktop, or whether you prefer to work out of the Teams application, your file sharing, syncing experience is going to be exactly the same, and so is the structure. Really, again, of course, everything is very permissions based. So a lot of the beauty in it too is that, Teams is taking the collaboration a step further. And again, you can create private Teams channels, private Teams sites, again, that are all going to inherit the permissions based off of what is either set on that SharePoint site or set for that team itself. So they really are inheriting each other's permissions. Again, unless you're creating something separate like a private channel and then breaking permissions from the parent.
Oh, sorry, my mic's off. Nice. Thank you for that info. So now you talked about Teams, but OneDrive even more so integrated with SharePoint. How do the two work together?
Yeah, this is one of those questions too that comes up a lot with people who are very familiar with OneDrive, and they say, well, what's the difference? Well, there's a huge difference. They look almost identical when you're looking at the syncing and sharing options that are included, so it is very user friendly. If you are somebody that has worked in OneDrive in the past, all of the capabilities that you'll see within the document library on SharePoint are going to appear nearly the same. The key difference is that OneDrive, again, if it's associated with a work or a school account, are your personal work or school files, meaning you are the sole manager of your permissions. You decide when you're going to collaborate with people. And SharePoint is really designed for company-wide collaboration. It's, again, going to be permission structured based on your teams and your groups that have been set up. So let's say, for example, within SharePoint, we have a marketing team. Everybody on that marketing team that should have access is going to share the same exact documents within that marketing folder. Whereas if I'm working on a private file, excuse me, within Word, and I'm just drafting, let's say, a flyer, or I'm making a new campaign, but I'm not quite ready to move it into shared resources yet, that's going to live in my OneDrive until I decide to share that out or use the move to or the copy to feature that's located within the file options to bring that over to a collaborative space. OneDrive is also the sync agent that is really bringing down all of those files from, let's say, if you're fully managed and you're not syncing manually, but you're syncing automatically, OneDrive is going to act as the syncing agent to bring down all of those SharePoint Online files.
One more question. Do you have any tricks or tips as far as making the sync behave well? Because this is a different line of thinking than the traditional file server. Everything's on premise. Occasionally things happen. Any like words of wisdom or tips or ways to prevent issues?
So I guess there's a couple of things that we could say here. So if, for example, you have sync done automatically and you feel that, you're not seeing the changes appropriately, I always say, in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, there's always going to be the OneDrive cloud that you can actually see running, where the time and your little Wi-Fi are located in the bottom tray. Click that and make sure that you are always signed into OneDrive. You will see errors automatically and see like your name, you'll be prompted to sign into your account if you're not seeing that on a Word document or an Excel document if you're working. However, just always make sure that you're signed into your account. Another really good thing too is that if you are working in the SharePoint Online space, trigger a manual sync by hitting the sync button on the ribbon. We'll take a look at that shortly when we get into the document libraries as well. And then if you're ever planning on being offline, let's say you're taking a business trip and you need to have a specific set of files available for yourself, whether offline or in the cloud, you want to make sure that that's going to be there for you, whether you have internet connection or not. So there are abilities within your File Explorer or Finder on a Mac to just right-click that file and choose the option that says always keep on this device. If you do that, whether you are connected to the internet or not, you will always have the ability to edit and work on those documents. And the minute that you reconnect to the internet, all of those changes are going to instantaneously sync up to the cloud. And if for some reason you ever need to revert back to a previous version, you're always able to go into your version history and revisit that previous version and restore, and vice versa. If you want to go back from the one that you originally edited, you can change that up to as many times as you need to.
Thank you for that. All those tips. Those are great. The version history is something that I know I forget about. Mm-hmm. So it's a nice way for the end user to dial back, the revisions and things. So thank you.
Oh yeah, I use it internally all the time when people go in and leave their little comments on my stuff.
I
Oh
have a
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So one thing I see a lot of our clients will say, especially on like Mac, is they don't know to check that little cloud icon. And they're like, oh, is there any other way I can see? Like it's just this tiny little cloud in the top right corner of their screen.
Mm-hmm. On a Mac device specifically, how to view that in a different view, I think they'd have to work out their own settings within the view of their Finder.
Okay.
However, I do have a PowerPoint that I can give over to you afterward that just goes over the different symbols within File Explorer. It is more geared toward File Explorer, however. But the symbolism is going to be exactly the same whether you're on Windows or Mac. So it just kind of walks through how to change that symbolism, which each of those means, and then just has some support at the end of it as well if they need some more clarification on any of those symbols.
That is one thing I noticed, Michaela, is Microsoft's doing a better job of trying to keep the settings, the look and feel, trying to keep them the same as much as possible. I mean, they're not 100% there yet, but they are pretty close. They're closer than say 1 or 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
it helps us who are traditionally, we come from a Windows environment,
Mhm.
most of us, but then, more and more Macs out there, and we certainly have clients that, all Mac, and
Mhm.
we need to be able to give them as seamless of operations as possible, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as things get more modernized in this world that we've been in now after COVID, they had no choice but to really unite the way that they make the view of everything. And it does, it makes things so much simpler. I know we've worked with a lot of education systems that, they have to reach Mac devices, they have to reach Windows devices, and to teach, these educators that are responsible for education how to get through all of these different nuances was just too much. So we've seen a lot of improvements in just the cohesiveness of the operating systems and the way that these tools perform on them recently.
Yeah, my wife is on a Chromebook, unfortunately, and while the Google ecosystem is good and it does, it's a nice cheap solution, but between the laptop and some of the other things, she gets pretty frustrated with that setup. So
Oh yeah.
maybe eventually they'll move to. They used to be Mac, right? They used to be all the teachers used to get Mac, but then they, trimming costs, they got the Chromebooks and things. So
I feel a lot of schools do that. They'll go with the Chromebooks now.
yeah.
Yeah, they do. And now it's funny you say that, and I don't want to get too deep into it because I can't spoil anything before they, concretely establish it. But there is going to be support for Chromebooks coming out with an endpoint manager as well, which will be really huge for the education systems.
Yes, definitely. They definitely need that. So
Absolutely.
Chris, you have any questions?
So I mean, this is one me and Brian spoke about. So could they store CAD files in SharePoint? Is there any gotchas to it?
Yes, 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 and yes. All right. So we actually have supported quite a few engineering firms that work with CAD files and have moved over to SharePoint Online. So SharePoint is a native CAD viewer. If you do want to edit CAD files, they do need to be synced down to their devices within File Explorer or Finder on their Mac. Again, we've worked with some engineering firms. We've got them established in it and they're loving it. They say it's really seamless. CAD files, as we all know, are very large. So that's the reason why it needs to be sunk down to the device. Again, it can be both available locally and on cloud. Doesn't always need to just be taking up that storage on the device itself. We have seen the check-in, check-out policy utilized with CAD, but honestly, check-in, check-out is kind of a thing of the past and it's going away. The more we transition into this Viva that we'll be getting into at a later time. And we do, again, just we've seen quite a bit of this with CAD. Again, it's just when it's sunk down to their devices, they can collaborate on their desktop versions of the applications and see the collaboration happening in real time, which is a fantastic thing. And again, because they're sunk down locally and up into the cloud while they are making those changes, if someone needs to hop into SharePoint and just view the file, they can see within the web interface what is going on, how that file has been changed. But if it needs to be worked on and edited, that does need to be done within the desktop. Beautiful.
Oh, I got another one. Does SharePoint like cache the files locally? What happens if the the network connection disappears or it's gone?
Yeah, so kind of looping back to what we were talking about earlier, if you're on a business trip or you need to switch the status of a particular file, yes, SharePoint does cache files locally. Traditionally, the way that we usually recommend deploying things, we have them available both locally and within the cloud. So it's not really natively impeding on your device's storage. It really is utilizing that cloud storage. However, if you are, again, going to be experiencing, let's say, no network connection, you're on a flight, you're on a trip, you could possibly be dealing with a storm. There is always a way to flip your files to be always available locally on the device. And it's actually denoted by a circle with a green check mark in it. And it's actually a solid green circle with a white check mark. If it's just a rimmed green circle with a green check mark, that means that it's available both in the cloud version and on your device. And again, if the internet goes down, God forbid, the minute that you are reconnected to the internet, any change that you have made on that particular file is going to sync right up to the cloud. And even the people that are collaborating with you on that document will be notified of your changes. And there are actually a lot of different features within SharePoint that you can configure for instances like this, both on the file level and on the folder level. There's actually an alert me feature, which can be really helpful, especially in a collaborative environment if it's not just a OneDrive file. And again, this isn't just available as a feature within SharePoint. That is also a feature of the OneDrive. So again, if you need that file available locally, you can always ask it to sync on this device. Always ask always, right? And then alternatively, when you are done, and let's say you're working on a really heavy thing like a CAD file or a QuickBooks file, you can then right click again on that file or folder and choose to send it back up to the cloud in the same method that you use to always keep on this device, just to free up some storage.
That's great. Michaela, not to put you on the spot, but just to get away from the talking points for a couple minutes here, would you mind showing us a few things in SharePoint, some of the basics and some of the stuff that you've already talked about?
Absolutely. So let me go into a really plain looking Teams site, and then we'll take a look at a communication site that's backed by Viva. All right, so can you see my screen here?
Yep.
Sure.
Perfect.
Yep.
So from a very scratch view, this is what SharePoint would look like. Again, like I mentioned, it can function as an intranet, but primarily what people are using SharePoint for today is as like a document repository. So what we're seeing here on the far right-hand side is a view of the documents. If I hit see all from within here, we're going to see some similarities as to what we might be familiar with if we are a OneDrive user. So the structure looks nearly identical when it comes to the folders, when it comes to the syncing capabilities, when it comes to creating the new documents. So really just some of the basics we went over already is the syncing feature. How do we sync down these document libraries, or how do we sync down an individual folder? So this button here on the ribbon is actually what's going to perform that action. So if I were to come in here and just hit sync, it's going to look like nothing is actually going on in the back end. But what's really happening is that this entire document library for sales and marketing that is shared is now being brought down to my file explorer so that I can go in and access my files from there rather than having to come onto the web and get to them from here. What that kind of looks like in real time, give me just a second. I'm going to pull up my file explorer, and I apologize for the size. I wish there was a way to natively make this bigger. What you'll see here, and again, this is in the slide deck I'm going to provide to you later as well. This little blue office building that says NetLogic Computer Consulting LLC, this is my SharePoint environment. These are all my SharePoint files. So any sites that I have sunk down are going to correspond to these particular folders. So these are all my files that are, again, living in SharePoint, but I can access from my device. And what you'll see here too is you'll notice I have these little blue OneDrive icons. That represents that this is in the cloud. It's not impeding on my device storage. Whereas we're seeing this little green check mark here that has the white hollow center, that means it's available both locally and in the cloud. And then what we can also see is that this sync button is happening, which means as of right now, while I am working, somebody is in the My 365 partner files and they are making changes. And I can even see that happening right from here while I'm not even working there. So all of those changes are really syncing and saving in real time, whether you are working on the web or from your desktop. Alternatively, you can see directly below that, I have my OneDrive environment, again, still associated with NetLogic Computer Consulting because that is my work account. So all of my private OneDrive files are going to live within here, including, things I keep on my desktop, my downloads, any documents that I've started, my pictures, my notebooks, my meeting recordings. That's all going to live natively within my OneDrive versus my collaborative space, which is going to be SharePoint.
Which we won't get into all this nitty gritty detail, but your IT administrator or power users have all sorts of reports and whatnot for the OneDrive, what's happening with OneDrive. So it's not like using some of these shadow IT programs like, I don't know, like a Dropbox or some other syncing tool where you don't have that administrative insight and the ability. Sometimes owners and CXOs, they want to know like what people are doing, not so much what they're doing, but is the data being, where's it going, right? Where is it being moved outside the organization? What's happening with the data. So that's the nice thing about if you go into the Teams portal or the SharePoint portal, you can kind of keep an eye on, where your data is going, right?
Absolutely. Yes, and there is that native feature that's now built into the admin center that allows you to track OneDrive sync health. And it's as simple as just enabling it with a quick toggle. And then the data is going to start pulling in about all of your users and not their behavior necessarily on OneDrive, but just the account health and how the sync is actually performing. And it makes it really, really simple to perform quick actions like hopping in and assisting them to get them back up and running within minutes. So you're right, it's not clouded, it's very easy to see. And then of course, as we all know, or maybe we don't know, everything within Microsoft 365 is designed to work together kind of like cogs in a clock. So if you are somebody that's looking for more of a visual element rather than reading numbers all of the time, there are ways to make graphical reports of all of this performance and send that over to a CEO, a COO, a CXO, if that's something that they would rather view, understand, and look at, rather than crunch the numbers like us tech people always do.
Yeah, they don't get into the same sort of details we do, right? So
yeah.
So if I'm an employee, I'm old school. I typically go into my file server. This kind of looks like that, but I have to log in. I have to go into a web page. Can you show me something that maybe looks more like my world? Like, can I get to the same information through File Explorer, or as if the file server's here on premise? You know what I mean? Like to say I don't want to go to the web page. How else can I get to this information?
So you're saying you don't want to access it from the web?
Yeah, just want to access it from File Explorer or whatever, right? Yeah, I mean, you went into that a little bit, right? That sometimes this scares people, right? Seeing the web page and I've got to log in and all this, or it might sign me out or whatever. You probably have a trick for that too, but it might sign me out at some point during the day. So I mean, can you show me how I get to my files through File Explorer?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, whether you're on Windows 10, Windows 11, or working on a Mac, your Finder or your File Explorer would be located right on your toolbar. And you just simply open this up. And let me open this up here. And now what we can see again, like we were just taking a look at, is that I have this little blue office building here. And again, this is corresponding to everything that's going on the web without me having to open up the web, sign in, sync down. I can just drop this down and go into any of my folders that you'd be more familiar with seeing on a server. So if I needed to work in my marketing files, I can just quickly hop in here. I don't need to be in my marketing site, and I can see that all of these are available for me in the cloud. And again, if I wanted to keep these consistently on my device, it's going to be as simple as just right clicking. And then there's going to be this option, always keep on this device. We're going to see in just a second, it's going to sync, and then it's going to flip to a solid green check mark indicating that it is available all of the time, whether I'm connected to the internet or not, for me to go in, make my changes and edit. And then I can confidently know that when I am done and I am reconnected to the internet, that everything is going to change and sync up to the cloud. What I can also do again is to get rid of the option, and I don't want to keep this on my device anymore, saying this is a really thick file, we don't want it taking up device storage. We can use the option directly below it that says free up space. And that's immediately going to go ahead, resync it with the cloud, send up those changes, and give me back the storage that it was taking up natively on my device and my C drive.
That's great. I mean, I know you clicked around it and stuff, but I that's always a sticking point with clients is you try to move them from an on-premise environment to the cloud, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, it's just a look and feel that might mess with their head a little bit. And that was a great explanation and reinforced that, you know, that even if the internet goes down, right, you're dependent on the internet, but if it goes down, it'll still keep the files locally, and you once the internet comes back, then it'll just automatically sync up. So
absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting, you know, we're talking about the internet going down too, because this actually happened to me today. And I live and breathe in SharePoint Online. I live and breathe in OneDrive. I live and breathe in Teams. Our entire organization is run out of these tools. But the beauty of it, you know, is that I'm a bigger work from my desktop type person. I don't really need to go into the, you know, document libraries within SharePoint because I have all of these natively here for me. But it made life so easy because, you know, at first I was like, oh no, the internet's out. But I could continue working on everything that I had up and running because I made sure that I had that configured, you know, by my administrator to say, always keep these particular files on my device in case of emergencies. They said, okay. So it's really as simple as just communicating that to your IT provider, what your needs are, and what always needs to be available to you, you know, in spite of internet connection or not. And then, of course, there's the manual controls that we just went through here where you can switch to have them always local and then free up space.
So I'll ask one more question, then I'll let Chris ask another. Is there a way I can map drives like you can with a typical on-premise server?
So it syncs down automatically?
Yeah, so you know how you map a drive on a server, you know, and you call it, you name it, you know, KLM, whatever you want, right? And you're just mapping the folder contents. You know, there's a lot of our clients do that. So can you do the same sort of thing with SharePoint?
You absolutely can. And it's really as simple as just getting and copying the library ID. So actually the same way that I'm looking at the sales and marketing and I clicked sync earlier, the process would essentially be coming in here and then choosing this real small blue text. Let me just hit cancel here real quick. And if I zoom in and I just select copy library ID, that's automatically going to be put onto my clipboard. What I would want to do from there is go into the back end of Endpoint Manager. And there's a OneDrive, SharePoint, and sync configuration policy, if we're going to talk a little bit about that. And it's really as simple as giving that a name. So I would just name it sales and marketing, and I would plug in that library ID, assign my members to that specific policy. And then once you're, you know, you have them hooked up to Azure AD, they're automatically going to have all of their files available on their device when they open it up out of box.
That's great. That's great, because that is another little sticking point. Again, it's a little sticking point, but yeah, that's it's hard. You know, if you take that away from people, they get a little nervous, right? So
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All of the files that we were looking at in my File Explorer 2, I did not trigger a manual sync. That was done by Endpoint Manager and my manager and my syncing agent for me by just doing that process we discussed, which is just taking that library ID and plugging it into a configuration profile and then just letting it sync down. Perfect. Perfect.
Chris, you got something?
Yeah. So this would be a big question. Is a lot of people ask if they can share those files outside of their organization. So
Mhm.
like if they get a SharePoint site, can they share those files out to their clients and customers or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. So let me just do a quick demonstration of what that would look like. So I'm just going to use my Adele folder here as an example. So let's just take a look here and realize that when we scroll over these folders, there's hidden elements that pop up that are available. So this right angle with an arrow, this is always going to be your ability to share. So if I hit share here, we're going to have a little window that pops up here with your options for sharing particular files. So let's say I want to specify specific people that can view or edit. I would want to use this specific setting. You can alternatively change can view to can edit. But let's say, for example, I want to share with anyone with the link. The reason why we are seeing this grayed out here in this example is because my organization is preventing this option. What can happen is that in a high level view within the SharePoint Admin Center, if someone comes to you and says, we need external sharing permitted, you have to allow external sharing in the entire environment of SharePoint. And then within your individual sites, let's say marketing, finance, sales, those are locked down to be internal only, but you need to have that top level external availability to use on any site within the environment. But what you would see is that if, let's say, for example, sales and marketing, this was prevented, this would be grayed out. But if I had a site alternatively that was named something like, client share, external share, I could have that ability enabled on that site for me to just select anyone with the link, and I can choose as the IT admin whether or not I want those people to provide some sort of verification code, MFA, to access those files when they receive them. But it's going to get delivered directly to their inbox, whether they're using Gmail, Outlook, does not matter. And they can receive a code with it, a direct link to open up the location that they've been brought to. And alternatively, if you're not looking to just deliver it to Outlook, you can just go ahead and copy the link here. And because I have it set to specific people, it wants me to put someone in here. So let me just use one of my pseudos here. And let's say I hit copy. Now, because I did specific people, I only can give this link to Adele because it was just targeted toward her and only she can edit. So there's really a lot of different control that you can have on particular files, folders, and then again, breaking permissions to make it even more complex moving down. But yes, external sharing is absolutely an option. We do this internally as well. If you've seen like our partner center that you work out of with us, external sharing happens a lot there. And then we've even built out some environments for people in consulting, law firms that have to share sensitive documents. And they've even added a level on top of it of sensitivity labeling and auto labeling to make sure that the integrity of those files are kept regardless of leaving the environment.
And just to chime in on that, as we meet with clients or prospects, that's becoming more of a concern for them, is this being able to label the data and know where the data is going. I just talked to a CPA firm the other day that, I just raised a few questions and they were like, wow, yeah, we don't know where this data is going. And, it makes us a little nervous as to what's going on. So I have one question about that sharing. Can you also expire the link?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So there's a way to do it on the folder level, and then there's also a way to do it organizationally. So when you enable external sharing for an organization, you can set how long you want them to have that particular access available. By default, SharePoint says 60 days. We usually change that again, especially if you're adhering to higher level compliance. We'll switch that to something like 14. Maybe even 7, depending upon, again, just the regulatory compliance that the organization could be adhering to. And then after those 7 to 14 days, they get completely locked out. If they try to hit the link, it's going to say invalid, not working. But everybody else that still has, internal access will still have the integrity of those files and the sharing capabilities. And then just to speak a little bit to what you were talking about as well with, issues with people not having insight into access, right from a view of, just within the online version too, if you can see here on this folder, there's a little people icon. So that's indicating to me that this was shared out with somebody else, and not just somebody that might be, in my organization. And then if you come in here as well, you can always hit manage access and take a look at all of the times that this has been shared and how it's been shared. So was it given as direct access, or was it given through a link to somebody else? And with the click of a button, I can just say, I do not want this person to have access anymore. And then they're automatically removed from that particular resource as well. Same thing with direct access. I could come in here and change their rights from owner to member, or even give them view only permissions. And of course, if things are going to get higher level, that's when you'd want to talk to your IT administrator about how to, break permissions, use security groups for permissions as well. But yes, there's a lot of insight into who has access to what within these folders.
So have you ever created a report for clients that say they want to audit that sort of, like you can bring it up as the end user, which is nice, right? But how many people are going to go back and check their own stuff? You probably would, because you seem very particular about things, right? But, typically, I mean, I'm all over the place, right? So even me, who's, has IT roots, like, I'm not going to go back and check that. So have you guys created, or is Microsoft, do they have a canned report that shows all the permissions on things, or alert you if something might be shared out too long, and you need to go back and check your permissions? You know what I'm getting at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So out of the box, not really a native report. However, like you're talking about with alerts, there's absolutely a way to receive alerts on any kind of change, any ad, anything at all. And a lot of the changes, and if you've ever worked in Microsoft before, you'll realize that a lot of the tools that are really necessary are hidden under what I call the 3 little dots. They call them show actions. So if I come in here, of course, we looked at manage, but the alert me feature is really huge. So this is available on a file level and also on a folder level. So if I were to come into this option here, it's going to tell you right off the bat, we're going to alert, the user when items are changed. Now you can set this for individual users. You can set this for an administrator so that they know when to go and check things and make sure that everything is kosher. However, what's going to happen is you can change that alert title. Right now it's saying documents for Adele, because that's the folder that we're working off of. So it's always going to suggest the folder name first. You choose your delivery method. Text message availability will be coming in the fall. As of right now, it's just going to go to your email. Change type, you can choose what kind of change types you're going to get. So again, do you want to be alerted for all changes? That can get really crazy. Do you want to be alerted when new items are added, when existing items are modified? If you're collaborating with people, it's always a good idea to put something like this on a particular folder, not even just for auditing purposes or making sure that appropriate access is there, but say you're working on a collaborative project and you need somebody to finish their piece of the puzzle before you can step in. If you flip this to existing items are modified and then you receive that notification, you don't have to waste your time checking and rechecking the status of that if they've completed their work, or even, I would say kind of like micromanaging them, like, hey, did you do this yet? You'll know instantaneously when they have completed what you've asked them to do. And then again, you're going to pick what kind of changes, if anything changes, if someone else changes a document, if someone else changes a document created by me, or a document that was last modified by myself. So it really can be used for anything, whether you're working together on a particular piece or if you're sort of tracking all of the updates that are made on these particular folders and files. I've seen CEOs use this in the past too, to track just, whether or not people are even using the folders that they want. And then they just like to get an overview of all of the work that's been done for that particular project in a week. So then you can configure, when do you want to receive these alerts? Are you somebody that is always living in your email? If so, you can send notification immediately. You can receive a daily summary and choose the time that works best for you, that's going to respect your time zone. Or alternatively, if you're busy and you're a CEO, you could say send a weekly summary. And once you receive that summary, you're going to get a direct link to each and every change that has been made. Now, good luck to whoever's going to be going in there and viewing all those individual links, but it's absolutely possible. And I guess actually kind of going back to what I said, Brian, that could serve as a report.
Multifaceted. Like, and I didn't even, I know that item is in there from right clicking, but I never drilled down into it. That's like, it's a multifaceted tool from, like you said, the CEO, or if he's too busy, the office manager.
Exactly.
And, you know, can, in this delegation, and it's a bit of a, like a project management tool without having all the fancy, you know, getting into project and, you know, doing some other stuff. So that's cool. Or like we see a lot of times, you know, we'll ask the client, like, you know, what kind of SaaS applications are you using? Oh, we're using Dropbox, and we're using Trello, and we're using this, and we're using that. And because it's easy to buy, right? It's easy to set up. But next thing you know, I call it SaaS sprawl. It's just, you know, they've got 20 different applications and no management of the applications in terms of security. Or are they getting any, is anybody using it? Or is it just money thrown out the window? But there's some basic free stuff built into SharePoint and other parts of 365 that, you know, people aren't using. That's great.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing too, is with a $20 license, you're getting automation, you're getting file share, you're getting collaboration, you're getting security, compliance, endpoint management. The list goes on and how many dollars this can really save, not even to mention the amount of time that this can save for a user when they're performing their work actions. It really is a powerful, powerful suite. And I feel like we're only just scratching the surface, you know, on how much more we could get into with the integration and automation that, you know, SharePoint teams and Power Automate all bring together. It really is a very, very powerful set of tools.
Well, that's why we have you here, because you can't harness all the different features. They keep coming out with new features, and it's like, I didn't know that was in there. I didn't know that was in there. Usually you guys know it's in there, but you know, it, or if you don't know it, somebody on the team does. So that's just, that's great. The, because I want to be respectful of your time, can you just go into Viva a little bit, and we'll move away from SharePoint and we'll wrap things up here?
Absolutely.
And if there's anything that you think we should see, just you know, take over.
Perfect. Yeah, so Viva is a beast. It is awesome. It's the future of SharePoint Online, and it's definitely the future of where the Microsoft 365 suite is moving. What you'll notice is this is still a SharePoint site. We're still in the SharePoint environment. We're just looking at a very basic Viva page. It's really bringing together, you know, that element of hub navigation for ease of access to other locations across your SharePoint environment. So each of these individual sites is corresponding to a department or another site with its own individual document library and permissions within the environment. You know, you can also link your applications directly to Viva. You can have an all teams files section, a OneDrive archive, and then all of your Office 365 areas as well. And this can truly be customized to meet the needs of anybody. I've seen Viva used for nonprofits. I've seen it used for engineering. I've seen it used for education systems. I've seen it used for media and TV. And of course, IT, we use it as well. It's really bringing together the power of all of the Microsoft 365 suite into one place. And the unique thing about Viva is that it utilizes what's called Viva Connections. And what that's going to bring in is, if you're a user of Microsoft 365 and you utilize tools like Tasks, you use Outlook, most of us do, you use anything like approvals, you're going to have a unique experience on the right-hand side that's called your feed. And this is brought by Viva Dashboards. So if I had tasks available to me that I might have missed if I got bogged down, the first thing I'm going to see when I launch this page for myself and I open up my browser in the morning is things that I missed, important emails that I need to follow up on, and I can open them directly from here rather than having to go into 7 different windows and open up multiple applications. Everything can be done from this one all-inclusive splash page, if that's what you want to call it. Again, you can set up things like approvals, and approvals is an element of Teams that we can definitely get into at a later date, just to send requests, receive an approval, time off requests. And there's a learning element that's natively built into here for Microsoft 365 users, end user training and administrator training. So if you are looking to delve further into how to use these tools, that's natively built into here as well. And then also file recommendations for me to pick up right where I left off, or something that someone may have shared with me. So it's a little different because you see at the bottom here, this is my recent documents. This would show anything that I solely was recently working on. This is going to be anything that could be recommended to me based on the searches that I've made within my Outlook today, what I've been perusing for on the internet, as well as, any topics that I could have been just going through within my Viva learning element. So it's really bringing together the automation and the all-inclusiveness of the Microsoft 365 suite. One thing I will note too is that we did talk briefly in the beginning about the differences between a team site and a communication site. Viva Landing is built off of a communication site. It is not a team site and does not natively come with a Teams connection. So when we set up a Viva, typically what we'll do is we'll create a dedicated all Teams site, put all the users on there, and then attach that document library to Viva to allow for that cohesive file sharing in and out of Teams and the SharePoint as well. But really, Viva Landing is a great way to bring together a small to medium-sized business and enterprise to really just collaborate, get more engaged, and utilize their internet and just find their resources with ease. And again, can be customized as much as possible. All that's really needed is a link, some iconography, and any applications that you'd like to be using, and it can be done.
Sorry, my mic was muted. So that's great, and at some point we'll have to delve into that a little bit. That's fairly new. When did they come out with Viva? It's last few months?
Viva, beginning of 2022 is when it initially went into public release.
Okay, because we used to do this stuff with a splash page, and now it's pretty much, this is all pre-built, but with the exception of Teams that you're saying you need to connect Teams into it. But this is probably can be done by like a power user to tweak out the different widgets and whatnot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the only other thing aside from, like you said, you have to connect a team because it's not natively a team site. With Viva Connections, you have to activate it. So what you actually have to do, there's a couple of things. When you create your communication site, you call it, Viva Landing, Viva whatever the name is that you want it to be on. You have to actually take that URL and then go into your settings within the SharePoint Admin Center as an administrator and configure it as your company homepage. The reason being for that is that's going to initiate the activation of what's called Viva Connections. So once you come into this blank template of a page, you just have to manage your Viva Connections, make sure they turn on, and then all of these abilities become available to the user to have that inclusivity across all of their Microsoft 365 applications, etc.
So now I think we've spoken about this before, but they like each individual user can customize their own feed there. That's like unique to them, to their account rather.
So the tools roughly are the same within the dashboard, but the user experience is going to be completely unique. So if I had a salesperson in here and I'm, a tech or a marketing person, we're going to see completely different tasks. We're going to see completely different requests, completely different save for later content, and completely different recommended files. And again, this is a limited version of what we're viewing right now with some of the just options here for what can be put into a dashboard. Like we could put, specified news sources in there for people. We could put really anything that needs to go in there, as long as, again, you have a link to it. But yes, it's completely unique to an individual user.
Okay, great. Michaela, All right, we got to wrap things up. I know
right.
you could go probably all day just talking, and there's so many different features in 365. But we'll get you on another webinar, and we'll either talk about Viva or maybe a little advanced SharePoint or something else. But thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge and helping us become better and being a partner. Thank you.
Absolutely. Look forward to talking with you guys soon.
All right, great. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.